Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! The rays of dawn, softened by the vertical blinds, offered little comfort to the man as he silenced the intrusive wake-up call of his alarm. His heavy sigh reverberated, signaling the start of yet another mundane work week at Pinnacle Industries, and mirroring his wearisome morning ritual. His routine consisted of a familiar ensemble, a navy blue slacks, white button-down shirt, and, as was characteristic of Mondays, a somber tie. As he stood before the mirror, the harrowing reflection stared back at him, bearing the weight of weariness. His blonde hair, neatly combed, could not mask the fatigue in his eyes, which had seemingly forgotten how to twinkle.
"Market research. Here I come,"
he whispered, his enthusiasm as faded as the blazer hanging on his lanky body. Tobias, unaware of the adventures that lay ahead, adjusted his tie, ensuring it was perfectly aligned, as if it were a preparatory exercise for the linear, grayscale spreadsheets waiting for him. The subsequent moments, including the commute, blended into a dreary routine. The traffic snarls, the same radio station's stale playlist, and the habitual parking spot in the shadow of Pinnacle Industries' imposing headquarters seemed like echoes from every other Monday. Tobias settled into his desk, booting up his computer as he sipped the coffee he'd grabbed from the break room. "Morning, Richardson!" called out Frank from the neighboring cubicle.
"Ready for the big meeting?"
Tobias blinked.
"What big meeting?"
"Whole department. Conference room. 10 minutes. Frank's head popped over the cubicle wall.
"Didn't you read Hartman's email? Something about a new project. Sounds important."
The conference room filled quickly with the 12 men who made up the marketing department. The long table was nearly full when Douglas Hartman, the department head, entered carrying a stack of folders.
"Good morning, gentlemen,"
Hartman announced, distributing the folders around the table.
"We've secured the Athena account."
A murmur of approval rippled through the room. Athena Beauty was one of the largest cosmetics companies in the country, and landing their account was a significant win. "Their new line of products targets professional women in their 30s. We need to develop a comprehensive marketing strategy that resonates with that demographic." Hartman cleared his throat.
"And therein lies our challenge. As you may have noticed, our department isn't exactly diverse."
The men around the table glanced at each other. Indeed, Pinnacle's marketing department was entirely male, mostly white, and mostly over 40.
"We need a female perspective on this project," Hartman continued. "I've requested HR to expedite hiring, but with the timeline Athena has given us, we can't wait. We need to start immediately."
The room fell silent. Tobias flipped through the folder, scanning the product details. Moisturizers, foundations, subtle lipsticks, all designed for the working woman who wanted to look professional without spending hours on makeup.
"So, what's the plan?"
asked Marcus from the end of the table.
"Bring in consultants?"
"Budget won't allow it,"
Hartman replied.
"And focus groups will take too long to assemble."
Tobias wasn't sure what made him say it. Perhaps it was the 3 years of having his ideas dismissed, or maybe it was the second cup of coffee. Whatever the reason, the words left his mouth before he could stop them.
"I could do it,"
he said, immediately regretting the statement as 12 pairs of eyes turned toward him.
"Do what exactly, Richardson?"
Hartman asked, eyebrows raised. Tobias swallowed hard but committed to the absurdity.
"I could provide the female perspective. I could cross-dress, become a woman for the project."
The room erupted in laughter. Frank clapped him on the back.
"Good one, Tobias."
But Hartman wasn't laughing. He was studying Tobias with an intensity that made him uncomfortable.
Actually,
Hartman said slowly, silencing the room.
that's not the worst idea I've heard.
Sir? Tobias felt his stomach drop.
Think about it. We need someone who understands our company, our methods, but can approach this from a different angle. A fresh perspective.
Hartman tapped his pen against the table.
Richardson has been with us for 3 years. He knows our process. You can't be serious,
Marcus interjected.
This is a major account, not a comedy sketch. I'm dead serious,
Hartman replied.
Richardson can work on the Athena project exclusively, developing it from a unique viewpoint. It's unconventional, but so is this industry. Sometimes we need to think outside the box.
Tobias sat frozen, unable to process what was happening. His joke, his stupid impulse joke, was being taken seriously.
What do you say, Richardson?
Hartman asked.
Are you willing to commit to this? For the duration of the Athena project, you'd present as female in the office. We'd introduce you as a new team member.
The logical part of Tobias's brain screamed at him to backtrack, to laugh it off, to say he was kidding. But another part, a part he rarely listened to, was intrigued. 3 years of watching his ideas get sidelined or attributed to others had left him frustrated. Maybe this was a chance to be heard, even if through a bizarre charade.
Yes,
he heard himself say.
I'll do it. Excellent.
Hartman nodded, as if they'd just agreed on something as routine as a deadline extension.
Take the rest of the day to prepare. Tomorrow you'll join us as... He paused. You'll need a name. Nyla,
Tobias responded, the name of his childhood imaginary friend suddenly popping into his mind.
I'll be Nyla. Perfect. Gentlemen, tomorrow you'll meet your new colleague, Nyla. She'll be working on the Athena project, providing the female perspective we need.
Hartman gathered his papers.
Meeting adjourned.
As the room emptied, Tobias remained seated, wondering what he'd just gotten himself into. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Hartman had arranged for the company to cover necessary expenses for the transformation, providing a corporate card with a generous limit. Tobias found himself in a department store, standing awkwardly in the women's section, completely out of his depth. "Can I help you?" A sales associate approached, her name tag reading Diana. Tobias fumbled for words.
I need a professional wardrobe. For work.
Diana looked him up and down. For yourself? No. I mean, yes. It's complicated. Tobias lowered his voice.
It's for a work project. I need to present as female.
To her credit, Diana didn't bat an eye. I see. Well, let's start with the basics. What sort of office environment?
Corporate, marketing, business professional? All right, let's find you some appropriate office attire. What size are you?
The next 2 hours were a crash course in women's professional fashion. Under Diana's guidance, Tobias selected several outfits: black pencil skirts, silk blouses in neutral tones, a few modest dresses, and a pair of tan pumps with a reasonable heel. "You'll want this too," Diana said, handing him a padded bra. "And stockings. And you'll need makeup." She led him to the cosmetics counter, where another associate named Monica took over. By the time Tobias left the store, the company card had taken a significant hit. His car was filled with bags containing clothes, makeup, a wig of shoulder-length blonde hair, since his own hair was too short, and various accessories he hadn't known existed until today. That night, he practiced walking in heels in his apartment, falling multiple times before mastering a somewhat stable gait. He watched makeup tutorials online, attempting to follow along with the products Monica had recommended. The results were mixed at best. Morning arrived too quickly. Tobias, or rather Nyla, stood before the mirror, barely recognizing the person staring back. The blonde wig framed his face, which was now covered in foundation that didn't quite match his skin tone. The black pencil skirt felt restrictive, the silk blouse strange against his skin, and the padded bra created an illusion that felt both foreign and oddly right.
Hello,
he said to his reflection, wincing at how deep his voice sounded. He tried again, raising his pitch.
Hello, I'm Nyla.
Better, but still not convincing. The drive to work was nerve-wracking. Every stoplight became an opportunity for neighboring drivers to stare, or so he imagined. The walk from the parking lot to the building felt like crossing an exposed minefield, each step in the tan pumps a potential disaster. Hartman met him in the lobby.
Richardson, or should I say, Nyla, you look professional. Thanks,
Tobias replied, trying to maintain the higher pitch he'd practiced.
This is bizarre. It's innovative, Hartman corrected. Now, I've briefed security and reception. As far as anyone outside our department knows, you're Nyla Davis, transferred from our West Coast office to work on the Athena project. Let's head up.
The elevator ride was silent. Tobias acutely aware of how the clothes felt, how different his silhouette appeared in the reflective doors. When they reached the 12th floor, Hartman led the way to the department.
Everyone,
Hartman announced to the curious faces.
This is Nyla Davis, joining us from the West Coast office. She'll be working exclusively on the Athena project. Please make her feel welcome.
Tobias, now fully in character as Nyla, nodded politely, attempting a small smile. The men from yesterday's meeting gave knowing looks, some suppressing smirks, others openly skeptical. Frank gave a thumbs up from his cubicle.
Nyla will be using the office at the end of the hall,
Hartman continued.
The one we've been using for storage.
It's been cleared out and set up for her. The small office was indeed cleared of the boxes that had occupied it for years, now containing just a desk, computer, and chair. It felt isolated compared to the open cubicle layout of the main floor, but Tobias was grateful for the privacy.
The Athena materials are on your computer, Hartman said. I expect a preliminary concept by the end of the week.
With that, he left, closing the door behind him. Alone in the office, Tobias exhaled deeply, feeling the constraints of the unfamiliar clothing. She, adjusted in the chair, turned on the computer, and began reviewing the Athena files. The week progressed with unexpected challenges. Using the women's restroom required careful timing to avoid encounters. Lunch breaks became solitary affairs in the small office. The clothing, while increasingly familiar, remained a constant reminder of the charade. But something else was happening too. As Nyla, Tobias found a freedom in approaching the project that he'd never experienced before. Ideas that had been dismissed when coming from Tobias were now considered thoughtfully when presented by Nyla. The preliminary concept he developed for Athena, focusing on efficiency and authenticity rather than transformation and perfection, received praise from Hartman.
This is exactly the angle we needed,
Hartman said during their review meeting.
The 5-minute face concept perfectly targets the professional woman who doesn't have time for elaborate routines. It seemed logical,
Nyla replied, the higher-pitched voice now coming more naturally.
The research shows these women value their time. Beauty shouldn't be a burden. Excellent insight. Develop this further. I want a full presentation in 2 weeks.
As Nyla walked back to her office, she noticed the changed dynamics. Colleagues who had ignored Tobias now held doors open. Opinions were sought rather than overlooked. It was as if the clothes, the makeup, the presentation had transformed not just his appearance, but his value to the company. At home, the transformation became less of a performance and more of a routine. The makeup application improved with practice. Walking in heels became second nature. The blonde wig, styled each morning, felt less like a disguise and more like a part of her identity. 2 weeks turned into a month. The Athena project progressed, with Nyla's concepts forming the core of the marketing strategy. The Professional Beauty, Beautifully Professional campaign was approved not just by Hartman, but by Athena's executives themselves. "They love the approach," Hartman announced after a conference call. "They specifically mentioned how refreshing it was to see a campaign that understands their target market. Excellent work, Nyla." The praise felt different than any Tobias had received in his 3 years at Pinnacle. It felt genuine, deserved. It felt right. As the project continued, the boundary between Tobias and Nyla began to blur. Weekends, once spent reverting to Tobias, gradually included more time as Nyla. Clothes shopping became less of a chore and more of an exploration. The blonde wig was replaced with a higher quality version that looked more natural. Makeup techniques improved from functional to skillful. 3 months into what was supposed to be a temporary arrangement, Hartman called Nyla into his office.
"The Athena campaign is our most successful pitch in years," he said. "They've increased their budget and want to expand the scope. This could be a long-term partnership."
"That's wonderful news," Nyla replied. "Indeed, which brings me to a question I've been meaning to ask." Hartman leaned forward.
"How are you finding this arrangement?"
The question caught her off guard. How was she finding it? The truth was complex. As Nyla, she had found a voice, a confidence, a sense of self that Tobias had never known. The ideas that had been dismissed for years were now not just heard, but celebrated. The discomfort of the early days had faded, replaced by a comfort that felt increasingly natural. "It's been illuminating," she finally answered. "Different than I expected." "Different good or different bad?" "Different good, I think. My work has never received this kind of recognition before." Hartman nodded thoughtfully. "I've noticed. Your contributions as Nyla have been exceptional, which makes me wonder if there's a way to make this arrangement more permanent." "Permanent?" The word echoed in her mind.
"The Athena account is just the beginning. We're receiving inquiries from other clients who want the same approach. Your perspective is valuable, Nyla. More valuable than I anticipated."
The conversation left her with much to consider. That evening, she didn't change out of her work clothes immediately as she usually did. Instead, she sat at her dining table, still in the black pencil skirt and cream-colored blouse, contemplating Hartman's suggestion. The following day, Nyla made a decision. She arrived at work in a new outfit, a pale lavender suit she'd purchased over the weekend. The color was a departure from the safe neutrals she'd been wearing, a small statement of individuality. "Hartman," she said, entering his office. "I've been thinking about our conversation." "And?" He looked up from his computer. "I'd like to continue as Nyla, not just for the Athena project, but indefinitely." A smile spread across Hartman's face. "I was hoping you'd say that. Your work these past months has been transformative for the department. The team dynamics have improved, our concepts are stronger, and client satisfaction is at an all-time high." "Thank you," Nyla replied, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. "This feels right." The transition from temporary arrangement to permanent reality was surprisingly smooth. HR was informed, documentation was updated, and Nyla Davis officially became a full-time employee of Pinnacle Industries. Tobias Richardson was listed as having transferred to another office, his existence gradually fading from the collective memory of the department. The lavender suit became Nyla's signature look, paired with different blouses and accessories, but maintaining the distinctive color that set her apart in the sea of navy and charcoal. Her makeup evolved from the basic application she'd started with to a polished, professional look that enhanced rather than masked her features. 6 months after the fateful meeting where Tobias had jokingly volunteered to cross-dress, Nyla sat in her office, now permanently hers, decorated with plants and framed certificates, reviewing the latest campaign metrics. The Athena line had launched to critical acclaim, and sales were exceeding projections. A knock at the door interrupted her concentration. Frank stood in the doorway, holding a folder. "Got a minute, Nyla? I wanted to get your thoughts on this concept for the new men's grooming line." "Of course, come in." She gestured to the chair across from her desk. As Frank explained his ideas, Nyla found herself offering suggestions, the same suggestions Tobias might have made, but now delivered with the confidence and authority that came from being heard and valued. "That's brilliant," Frank said when she finished speaking. "Exactly what was missing. You have a way of seeing things from angles the rest of us miss." "Just doing my job," she replied with a smile. After Frank left, Nyla turned to look out the window. The city spread out below. The reflection in the glass showed a confident woman in a lavender suit, blonde hair styled in a professional bob, posture straight and assured. It showed Nyla Davis, rising star of Pinnacle Industries' marketing department, known for her innovative approaches and precise insights. The reflection showed her true self, finally visible to the world. The following weeks brought new challenges and opportunities. Nyla was invited to present at industry conferences, her innovative approaches to marketing traditional products to modern women, drawing attention from competitors and potential clients alike. Her wardrobe expanded to include more lavender suits, each tailored to fit perfectly, becoming her professional trademark. Colleagues and clients alike began to associate the color with her brand of marketing, sophisticated, thoughtful, and authentically feminine. One evening, as she was preparing for a major presentation, her phone rang. The caller ID showed a number she hadn't seen in months. "Hello?" she answered, her voice maintaining the pitch and tone that had become natural to her. "Tobias? Is that you?" The voice belonged to her mother. Nyla paused, realizing she hadn't spoken to her family since the transformation began. In the whirlwind of the Athena project and her subsequent rise in the company, she had deliberately avoided those connections to her past. "Mom, she began, then took a deep breath. "We need to talk. I'm not Tobias anymore. My name is Nyla." The silence on the other end stretched for several seconds. "I don't understand," her mother finally said. "It's a long story. Can I come over this weekend? I'd rather explain in person." The weekend visit to her childhood home was filled with explanations, tears, and ultimately, understanding. Her parents were confused but loving, asking questions that Nyla herself was still exploring the answers to. Was this a job role that had become something more? Was it an identity that had always been there, waiting to be acknowledged? The boundaries weren't always clear, but the reality was undeniable. Nyla was who she was now, who she was meant to be. "You seem happier," her father observed as they sat on the porch swing. "More yourself somehow." "I am," Nyla replied, smoothing the fabric of her casual dress, the first time her parents had seen her in women's clothing. "For the first time, I feel like people see me. The real me." Her mother reached over and squeezed her hand. That's all we've ever wanted for you. Back at work, Nyla's reputation continued to grow. The lavender suit became not just her signature, but a symbol of the fresh perspective she brought to the traditionally male-dominated department. When she walked into meetings, there was a respect that Tobias had never experienced. The Athena campaign launched fully, with billboards and magazine spreads featuring professional women applying makeup in car mirrors, on subways, in office bathrooms, all with the tagline, "Professional beauty, beautifully professional." Sales exceeded projections by 30% in the first quarter. Hartman called Nyla into his office to share the news.
"The board is impressed," he said, sliding a report across his desk. "They want to know what other markets we can target with your approach."
"I've been thinking about that," Nyla replied, opening a folder of her own. "There's an untapped market in professional women over 40. The beauty industry focuses so much on youth, but these women have purchasing power and specific needs that aren't being addressed." Hartman nodded, impressed.
"Draft a proposal. I want to present it at the next board meeting."
He paused, studying her.
"You know, when you first suggested this arrangement, I thought it would be a disaster, or at best, a quirky experiment that might generate some useful insights."
"And now?"
Nyla asked. "Now I think it was the best decision this department ever made. You've transformed our approach, our results, and, frankly, our workplace culture."
The praise warmed her, affirming what she had come to understand herself. The transformation from Tobias to Nyla wasn't just about clothes or makeup or a different name. It was about becoming authentic, about finding her voice and having it heard. That evening, as she prepared to leave the office, Nyla caught her reflection in the elevator doors. The lavender suit was impeccable as always, her blonde hair styled in soft waves that framed her face, her makeup subtle but flawless. But it was her posture, her confidence, the certainty in her eyes that struck her most. This was who she had always been meant to be. The journey that had begun as a joke, as a desperate attempt to have her ideas taken seriously, had led her to her true self. The elevator doors opened, and Nyla stepped forward into the lobby, heels clicking confidently on the marble floor. A group of executives from another company nodded respectfully as she passed, one woman complimenting her suit. "Thank you," Nyla replied with a genuine smile. "Lavender is my signature." Outside, the evening air was cool but pleasant. As she walked to her car, Nyla reflected on the strange, unexpected path that had brought her here. If someone had told Tobias a year ago that he would become Nyla, that he would find success and fulfillment in embracing a completely different identity, he would have laughed it off as absurd. But life often took unexpected turns, and sometimes the most unlikely paths led to exactly where you needed to be. Nyla unlocked her car, placing her briefcase on the passenger seat. Tomorrow would bring a new day of meetings, proposals, and the continuing development of the expanded Athena line. There would be challenges, of course. There always were in a competitive industry, but she would face them as Nyla, with the confidence and perspective that had earned her the respect of colleagues, clients, and even competitors. The blonde hair, the lavender suits, the feminine presentation. These had started as a costume, a role to play. But somewhere along the way, they had become a revelation. They had become real. She had become real. Nyla Davis drove home through the city streets, leaving Tobias Richardson firmly in the past where he belonged. The future, her future, stretched before her, as bright and promising as the lights of the city skyline against the darkening sky. As she entered her apartment, her phone chimed with an email notification. It was from Hartman, with the subject line, Promotion Opportunity. Curious, she opened it to find that the company was creating a new position, Director of Inclusive Marketing Strategies, and Hartman was recommending her for the role. The email concluded, "Your unique perspective has transformed not just the Athena campaign, but our entire approach to marketing. This new role would allow you to implement your vision across all our clients. Consider it an acknowledgement of the exceptional value you bring to Pinnacle Industries." Nyla sat down on her sofa, the email still open on her phone. Director. A position that would put her on the executive track, that would give her the authority to reshape the company's approach to multiple markets. She thought back to Tobias, sitting in that conference room half a year ago, making a joke out of desperation and frustration. How could he have known that joke would lead here? To this apartment filled with plants and books and a closet of women's clothing. To this career trajectory that outpaced anything he had dreamed possible. To this self, this true, authentic self that had been waiting to emerge. Nyla composed her reply to Hartman, accepting the opportunity to interview for the position and outlining her preliminary thoughts on how the role could evolve. She sent it with a confidence that came from knowing her value, her worth, her place in the world. The next morning, she selected her newest lavender suit, a three-piece with subtle pinstriping, and paired it with a cream silk blouse. Her blonde hair was styled in a sleek bob, her makeup applied with the skill that came from months of daily practice. The woman who looked back from the mirror was polished, professional, and completely comfortable in her skin. The drive to work felt different somehow, charged with anticipation. As Nyla walked through the lobby of Pinnacle Industries, she noticed heads turning, not with the confusion or amusement that had marked her early days as Nyla, but with respect and recognition. Hartman was waiting in her office when she arrived. "I see you got my email." "I did. Thank you for the recommendation." "You earned it. The board wants to meet with you next week. They're impressed with the numbers from the Athena campaign and want to hear more about your vision for this new department." "I'll be ready," Nyla assured him. After Hartman left, Nyla turned to her computer, opening a new document. "Inclusive Marketing Strategies, a Vision for Pinnacle Industries," she typed at the top. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as ideas that had been percolating for months poured out. This was more than a promotion. It was an opportunity to institutionalize the approach that had made the Athena campaign so successful, to ensure that marketing reflected the actual lives and needs of consumers rather than idealized, unattainable images. As she worked, colleagues stopped by her office to congratulate her on the potential promotion. Frank brought coffee. Marcus asked for her input on a struggling campaign. The team that had once smirked at Tobias in a dress now looked to Nyla for leadership and insight. The day passed quickly, and as evening approached, Nyla gathered her notes for the board presentation. She would be ready. She would show them exactly why this new approach was not just morally right, but commercially advantageous. As she packed her briefcase, her phone rang. It was Diana, the sales associate who had helped her select her first professional wardrobe as Nyla. "I hope you don't mind me calling," Diana said. "But I wanted to tell you I saw the Athena campaign billboard downtown. It's fantastic, and I remembered helping you that day, how nervous you were, and I just wanted to see how things turned out." Nyla smiled, touched by the call. "Things turned out better than I could have imagined. In fact, I'm about to interview for a director position." "That's wonderful! You'll need a power suit for that interview. Something that makes a statement." "I was thinking the same thing. Are you free Saturday?" "For you? Absolutely. I've got some new looks I think would be perfect." The The conversation left Nyla feeling warm. Diana had been there at the beginning, had seen her when she was unsure and awkward, and was still supporting her journey. At home that evening, Nyla opened her closet. On one side hung her collection of lavender suits, each a slightly different shade or cut, but all unmistakably hers. On the other side, pushed to the far corner, hung a single navy blue suit, the last remnant of Tobias's wardrobe, kept as a reminder of where she had started. She reached for it, running her fingers over the familiar fabric. Then, decisively, she removed it from the hanger and placed it in a donation bag. It was time to let go of the last physical connection to Tobias. He had served his purpose, had brought her to where she needed to be, but he was no longer needed. Nyla Davis stood in her apartment, surrounded by the life she had built for herself, the career she was forging, the identity she had claimed, the future she was creating. What had begun as a desperate joke had become a journey of discovery, leading her to the person she was always meant to be. And as she prepared for bed, selecting a silk nightgown from her drawer, she felt a profound sense of gratitude for the strange twist of fate that had brought her here. The blonde hair splayed across her pillow as she drifted to sleep, dreams filled not with uncertainties, but with possibilities. All the possibilities that awaited Nyla Davis, the woman she had become, the woman she had always been beneath the surface, waiting to emerge.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!